brewing certificate from Brew Labs UK. He's an engineer by profession and a seasoned entrepreneur. He discovered his love for craft beer amidst frequent trips to Europe. Next panelist is Siddharth Rastogi. Siddharth, thank you for being here. Siddharth is the CEO of Brewdog in India, it's a craft brand, which is, I think, the world's #1 by revenue. Siddharth holds a master's in management from IIM Lucknow. He's a seasoned management professional and he has close to 2 decades of diverse and significant work across industries, including Alcobev. His last role he spent in Diageo as the National Commercial Director and VP and Head of Sales Operation North. Ishan Puri, welcome. Ishan is the founder of White Rhino Brewing Company and he learned the art of brewing at Brewlab in UK before returning to India. Ishan Puri has one goal: bring together the best of ingredients, equipment, people to brew world-class craft beer right here in the heart of our country. Thank you, Ishan. Thank you for accepting our invitation and being here.
Thank you.
I think we all are here. And now let me introduce our moderator. I'm sure most of you know him, Ishan Grover. He's the brewmaster, hospitality professional, and an entrepreneur. He's the co-founder of Kadak Beer. And, we decided to call him Kadak today for this webinar. Okay, so he has a mission. He has a mission to put the craft beer into every beer enthusiast belly in India and abroad. So over to you, Ishan.
Thanks, Sunija. Thank you everyone for joining in. This is really, really tough time for all of us. COVID-19 has come across, we don't even know how to survive and how to live. And till 1 month back, we were all planning to go abroad, do a lot of things. I was supposed to be in US for craft beer conference today. My beers were supposed to be judged at World Beer Cup. And today I'm sitting, drinking coffee and talking to everyone. So these are really sad times. And to begin the conversation, I have one of the most common questions, and this goes for everyone. So I would request everybody to just, starting from Aman Dhal to Siddharth, Rahul Singh, Nakul, and like that, can unmute their mics and just tell us, just because since it is the first webinar on craft beer industry, we would just like to hear, what do you think has been the actual impact of COVID-19 on craft beer industry, starting with Aman, please.
So I think so from the supply chain side, our complete supply chain is right now broken. Ports are closed, right? And at the same time, because we are importing our beers from Belgium, and as you know, Hopper is brewed in Belgium at the Babandere family brewery in which we have an investment, right? So effectively the brewery is shut too. So right from brewing to shipping to logistics as well as ports. So that's what actually COVID has done to the supply chain. Now, that being said, right, while we may have these challenges, I'm sure it will not last forever, right? And it's a momentarily thing that, in the next 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, right, we will come back. But I think so one of the biggest challenges is that from the point of view of craft breweries, right, because they are small, they are largely family owned and led, right? The biggest challenge that would come in is managing cash flows because right now they are zero revenues, right? And at that point of time, in the pecking order of the priority list for even government financing and subsidies, right? Usually they are at the bottom end of the pyramid. So we have, supply challenges, liquidity challenges, as well as, in terms of financing challenges. So those are the three broad buckets, I think so, where the supply industry and the craft industry really stand today.
Thanks. Siddharth, you just launched Brewdog. It's been about 3-4 months back. The product was launched in India, and for somebody who just recently launched, you might be having a bigger plan. What are the challenges that you are facing right now?
Yeah, look, so I think we have to do kind of havan or some puja because 3-4 months after launching in India, we've reached a situation where everything is on pause, and Aman rightly pointed out a lot of the challenges that are there currently, a lot of challenges to come in the future, both from an off-trade and on-trade perspective. Nobody knows how long this is going to last. Nobody knows what the post-COVID recovery scenario in terms of operationalizing on-trade and off-trade again is going to be like. So those are some of the things that we'll have to handle as we go along. But I just want to step away for a minute and look at the fundamentals, because there is a way of evaluating this from a short-term perspective, and there's a way of evaluating this from a medium and long-term perspective. So if you look at the underlying factors of what craft beer is in India, right? I would start by saying that, look, you've got 135 crore population. You've got 16 crore drinkers amongst that. And within that, you've got this 135 crore drinkers drinking an average of 2 liters of beer per annum. That's the per capita consumption. So if you actually calculate for individual consumption of people who actually drink, it's about 17, 18 liters. Still very low compared to what is there in developed countries and beer drinking countries, but still a reasonably large number. The second thing is that the age profile that India has to offer, almost 65% population under the age of 40. A lot of population has already come into legal drinking age over the last 5 to 7 years. Estimated another 20 million people into legal drinking age every year for the next 7 years. So the good thing is that in India, recruitment into Alcobev starts from beer, right? It doesn't go straight into spirits. So as an industry and as a craft beer industry, I think we're still very well poised. The data and the trends continue to suggest that it's a very, very interesting market from a long-term perspective. Yes, craft beer has a longer gestation time, and we've seen that with the examples of US and UK, where craft beer has taken. US, for example, is at 14% of all beer sold is craft beer today. UK is at about 12%. We would be less than 1%. Yeah. So while we have a long way to go, we have the let's say the raw material in the population size, drinking culture, dissipation of let's say taboos and social attitudes for us to be very excited still about the medium and long term prospects of this industry. So the way we've got to look at this is what is it that we can do now, both from a government perspective and from getting together as an industry, which can influence the outcome over the next 3 to 4 months for us. And that's something I'm hoping that over the course of this webinar, we'd be able to get to some kind of common understanding of what each parts of the industry needs.
Right. So this is for Mr. Rahul Singh. It's a very, very unique scenario for you. You have outlets all across India. You are dealing with excise departments from all across India, and for you the laws will change from every single state. So we wanted to understand your unique perspective about how do you think is going to impact you in Gurgaon, maybe Mumbai, and which state do you think is more acceptable to you or understanding your situation in a much better way till now?
At this point in time, Ishan, nobody is hearing you. I think the lockdown has kind of kept people inside. So even the government functionaries that we are discussing with, the only leeway we've been able to get is to actually get our license fees deferred, or let's say, whatever we already paid, obviously is not going to come back, or we've been able to defer our VAT returns. So each state we're working on at least doing policy changes if we can. There's no way they will allow us to actually start selling beer. So if that's not going to happen, the only thing we can do in this interim is that we can actually make some policy changes, some positive policy changes. And that's what we end up doing the entire day, approaching all the excise functionaries, and I'm talking about commissioner and the minister level, and explaining to them how you can make a policy change, which at least in this lockdown can actually ensure that we don't bleed further down.
Right, policy change is definitely we are looking into. So coming back to the same thing with Nakul. Nakul, you guys as a president of Maharashtra Craft Brewer Association, I think you guys are representing for a policy change for growlers, for online sales. What first, just tell me, what do you think is the impact right now, and what are the challenges that you are facing as an association at Great State Ale? What is the scenario in Maharashtra at the moment?
I think most of it has been covered, the common challenges across all our breweries, whatever size and whichever state we are in. Biggest for smaller microbreweries like mine are, ensuring that we survive these 2 to 6 months from a cash flow perspective, because we won't have any cash flow coming in. We are completely dependent on restaurants here in Maharashtra, either as restaurant breweries, brew pubs, or breweries like mine that are supplying to bars and restaurants. So we're looking at a 6 months period where we won't see sale and any cash flow. So that's where internally we discussed and we have started our representation to the government, saying that the only way to ensure that we will survive this year is if we have direct access to the customer. And a growler as a concept is nothing new. It is maybe 35, 40, maybe more countries in the world that already allow it. So our ask here is to give us that access so that we can at least survive this year till things get back to normal.
I hope they listen to us and they give us some leeway. Manu,
Yeah.
from the F&B perspective, you have multiple tap rooms all across Maharashtra. You also have a brewery. So how is it going to impact you? What are your challenges in terms of F&B space? You have high rentals in a city like Mumbai. What is the scenario with you guys?
Scenario is pretty bleak. It's it's like hitting a right. We were on full tilt, right? We were pushing hard, and we were on a growth path. We had 5 here. There's one in Kolhapur that we've got. The one in Calcutta was to actually start on the 12th of April, and that's a large unit. That's about 8,000 square feet, full investment done. People onboarded, and we were in this. We were pushing, right? We were all growing because this is a great place to be. Craft beer, I think I'm really proud that I've been involved with it for 6 years, and I think there's only one way, which is up. But running on that speed meant we had all expenses, all our team was built up and all to do that. And from one day to the other day, we hit literally like hitting a rock. And you've seen those car accidents, right? Which actually get flattened out. And that's how heavy we feel right now. Literally no revenue. All pubs are shut. We have, with Effin Code, we have all pubs are located at, our Bombay one is at the gateway of India. Pune is Koregaon Park. We have all great locations, so high rentals that comes through. Zero revenues, beer in tanks already. We were all gearing up for March, which is March onwards, the beer drinking season starts. So all raw materials arranged for beers increased. In tanks now have roughly about amongst the 5 pubs have about 15,000 liters of beer, which is going. But the worst has been the manpower. Means we've got 325 people that we employ in our growing organization. And I've got all of them looking at me and saying, what next? So terrible time really. And still trying to make sense of the situation as of now. What do we do? Conversations with landlords. The landlords themselves are, they're themselves in a spot because it's their revenue stream that they have tied up. They've got their EMIs figured out. And so the only thing that we keep doing is keep hoping that there's some help which comes from the government. None so far.
350 employees, that's a very big number. Pravesh, I wanted to ask you, you have Asia's biggest brew pub. You say that you can accommodate 1,800 customers. First of all, how many employees do you actually employ directly and on your company? And what is happening with you guys in Bangalore? What is the things that, how are you guys dealing with it?
I think everybody, Ishan, is sailing in the same boat. Whatever Nakul and Rahul, everybody is talking is the same problem for the smallest cafe owner to a microbrewery owner to a big chain brand owner. The number of employees, as you rightly asked me, 683 is the total people who work on the permanent payrolls, and then there is outsourced manpower. So all in all, at one point we do have about 740, 750 people. That's the biggest concern, as Nakul was trying to emphasize. And I think for me, more than the restaurants past or what is the present, I think I'm more concerned about the future of the employees, because these are the guys who are at the bottom of pyramid, and they suffer the most. I do understand in certain WhatsApp groups how their concerns have been. This is the situation which is extremely volatile, and even for us put together salaries, it comes to about 90 lakhs to 1 crore. of this battalion of manpower which we have. There is only option left, which is to uh, raise further loans from the banks, and that also is quite difficult for us to survive in the next couple of months. We still will be raising our hands up and helplessly trying to accept the situation, because there is no respite until and unless government comes forward. And that also, I think the chances are very, very bleak. So for me, it's about the future. What has happened has happened. For me, it's about the future. We are really constantly uh, working on strategies with a very simple one-liner agenda. We have already, it's like almost like relaunching that microbrewery. The capex has been extremely high. We have forecasted the new top lines at a 50% of what we have been doing, and how do we try to sustain at a break-even point for the next 7 to 8 months. For us, it's about, and I think for everybody else, it will be around the point should be around survival of the fittest, applicable to human beings now, not just animals. And for us, business has reached that point where uh, we don't talk about profits anymore. We don't talk about green EBITDA margins. So yeah, that's pretty much what we are heading towards.
Right. Tough scenario. There's Ishan, wanted to ask you. I mean, your situation is also very unique. You're a very small craft beer brand with very low margins in the market. You make beers at a very shorter span time, and then you ensure that you have a smaller shelf life for your beer so that people can enjoy it as fresh as they can. What are you doing? Because you are in Madhya Pradesh. How much beer you have in your tank, and what are you going to do with it in coming time? You're on mute, Ishan.
Yeah, so I said, unlike Aman, whose supply chain is dependent on, importing from Europe, yeah, we obviously brew very close to our markets. Obviously, once we're allowed to start operating, I don't think supply chain is a problem, but the fact is depletion is going to be a huge problem. We obviously started brewing in February in preparation for the season, and this is actually one of the most untimely things about COVID is that it's coinciding with the beer season. March to August, March to September, this is when we sell most of our beer. So obviously we've got a lot of beer in tank. We've got beer at our brewery, which has been packaged. We've got beer at all of our regional warehouses, which we were planning to supply to the market in preparation for the season. So obviously, it's a huge challenge. I think what Nakul touched upon is that the trade practices are so restrictive that you really have no route to market and you have no other sales avenue aside from supplying to liquor shops and bars, restaurants, hotels, and whatnot. Just to give you a bit of an analogy, is we also operate in the UK in a small way, but over there we're still doing direct sales. The business hasn't come to a complete standstill. We're able to do direct orders, we're able to service online orders. All of our wholesalers are working. Obviously, precautions have been taken, but yeah, I mean, the supply of beer hasn't come to a complete standstill. So obviously, for me, having mentioned that we're totally dependent on the trade, we need to see how the trade recovers once lockdown ends. The way I see it is that we're going to be more dependent on retail in the near term, because it'll take longer for the on-trade outlets to rebound from this.
And if the retail doesn't open, what are your plans? I mean, how much beer do you have, and what do you think is going to be the future of the beers? If, for example, if it doesn't open in May also or in June also.
We haven't been to the brewery in a month. Okay, so the first thing is we got to go there and we got to try all of our beer. We need to see what is sellable, what is not sellable. I don't think the lagers will be too bad. I think the lagers will be okay. The question is, as with the wheat beers, with the IPAs, with the pale ales, I'm pretty sure all of our dry hop aroma will have faded by now. So now we'll just have to see. Currently there's no business going on. We're a manufacturing and selling business. And all our avenues are currently closed. So I need to, we'll start thinking once we walk back into the brewery, hopefully in the first week of May.
And Pravesh, you are one of the biggest breweries. Do you have any idea how much beer do you have in your tanks? What is the volume that you're looking at?
Yeah, so I think in Sarjapur unit we have about 6,000 liters lying in the BBTs, and in Hennur it was some 8,700, almost close to 9,000 liters. So altogether, I think 15,000 liters is what we have in the stocks. We really don't know if the restaurant is sealed. We can't even go inside. So I really don't know what to do with all that beer.
So is Manu, did excise just completely sealed off your brewery as well? Do you have idea how much you have, or it was just overnight that they just came and closed the breweries, or do you still have access to it? I think you're making some sanitizers out of it, so you might be having an access.
Yeah, fortunately, there wasn't any sealing that happened. There wasn't any, at least not in Maharashtra, that nobody came up and said lock it down and some stuff like that. Effin Good was actually, we took a decision even before the government said to shut you down. There were cases that were coming across, and I do believe that our restaurant spaces, unfortunately, we're in the business, but it is a center of rapid spreading is quite possible there at that time. So we didn't want any of our people to be unwell. We shut it down on the 16th and we sent everybody over. So the beer I have across now all 5 outlets, right? We were running all our cold rooms across all the outlets. I was chatting with my Maharashtra Craft Brewers Association members, what should we do, etc., and all that stuff. And we were all hopeful that we'll open. But Bombay and Pune doesn't look like we're opening anytime soon. Maybe, the rest of India will be, but Bombay and Pune, the numbers are still very high. So I took a decision day for yesterday I pull the plug on all my cold rooms because it was just adding on to the electricity cost. And most of our sale is in ciders and most of our sale is in wheat beers, right? The Hefeweizen would have settled, probably clarified. The IPAs would have lost their aroma. By the time I'm getting back, these are not what beers people will come for. So the only place that we are running is Koregaon Park. We're trying to see because the BBTs in production beers are there. So maybe we can control them. But yes, otherwise it's been a bad one. Yeah.
I wanted to ask this thing to Mr. Rahul Singh also. You have all our beers. What's happening to them? You have 45, 50 outlets, and probably most of us supply beers in kegs to you guys at your outlets. What is happening with those kegs? Have you kept the light on? Have you shut it down? What's going to happen with those beers?
So last count we had about 100,000 liters of beer.
Oh wow.
And I'm giving you liters because it's much easier to calculate. We have some in kegs, some in cans, some in bottles. And we'd actually really overstocked ourselves in the month of Feb and March because you know that every April you go through a label registration and all the branded beers. I'm not talking about microbreweries beers, but any other beers go through a lot of label issues, and you normally don't get goods in the month of March and April. So we overstocked ourselves in the month of Feb. We knew it's a long summer coming up. I remember the day we shut down, and we started shutting down. It wasn't like we shut down during the lockdown. It shut down much before that. Every state was pressing the gas and trying to shut down as soon as possible. The kegs which were all punched, we obviously took the CO2 out. We closed the machine. Those kegs have already, so about 400 kegs have already gone. We know that they've already punched kegs. And now we basically work on an ERP. So we know every batch, every expiry. And I can tell you, if we do not open in the next 3 to 4 months, I could probably say that all 100,000 liters will go away. So right now, anything in pasteurized form, safe till the time it reaches the shelf life. And we all know that the only liquor in the world which expires is actually beer. And people are not seeing it in that respect. Now, a lot of people compare this with spirits and wine, but beer is a perishable product. It's like milk. And you need to see it from that perspective. So I think what everybody's been talking about, allow on premises to have a 30-day off-premise window. Let us not waste natural resources. It's money already spent. It's good resources. In fact, you remember that meme which came out, Ishan, on your article 2 days back, that where is the drain which has been used to drain out all this beer that you throw? Why would you throw beer? And at the end of the day, if you recall in history, beer was made for plagues. Beer was made when there was famines. Beer was made actually to save mankind. That's what beer was done for. Look at why monks were making beers. Aman can tell you why all the abbeys in Belgium makes beer, because it is actually to save the mankind. And that's what it is. Whenever civilization was coming to a standstill, beer helped them. And I'm not joking, it's actually a fact. And that is why you need to give beer. It's very healthy. It's great for you. And you should be drinking beer right now. It'll be the best for anybody to do right now. Don't see it from an alcohol perspective. See it from a health perspective. And why waste this beer? Let it be given to. I'm ready to give, and I'm putting this on record right now, free beer to anybody if you can come and take it.
I have something to add.
Yeah.
I vote for Rahul Singh as President of India. Can we get him there, please? that passion shows, dude.
but have you seen even the Punjab Chief Minister has gone on record today and explained, when you can have vegetables and milk being supplied, why are you stopping anything to do with alcohol as much? It's as safe as anything else. There's nothing wrong with it. You're killing the excise. It's the only state, only country in the world where they've stopped it. Everywhere else, it's working on. You know that. There's nothing wrong with it.
We had in Maharashtra, we had one of his cousin Raj Thackeray, who actually went on record saying, "What are you doing? Open it up for a couple of hours." And then immediately we had the wives of the chief minister and the daughter of the supporting party saying, come what may, we are not going to allow alcohol. And that's where we are. That's what we're dealing against. There's no logic. Let's do stuff. And we keep hitting that wall again and again. Sad.
I hope someday, government understands our pain and let us do something. Right now the important thing is to fight COVID. But like PM said, Jaan bhi, Jahan bhi. So we have to keep all these things in mind. Aman, you guys have such a huge logistic chain. You work all across India with so many retail networks. How is the cash flow? What are you guys doing? You have a lot of staff. You have a lot of money stuck in VATs, excise, duties, and a lot of things are happening. So can you give us a little bit about what's happening in terms of that?
Sure, absolutely. So, I think so the most important part of any supply chain is your people. So, at Brynco, we have taken a decision that absolutely at any cost, there will be no salary cuts, there'll be no redundancies. So we are continuing to basically self-finance the operation, right? And keeping the employees motivated, that's very important for us. But I think so, the biggest challenge that will come from a supply chain point of view, once the dust of COVID starts settling down. And I'm sure what the government will do is that they will not on day one open retail, because if they open retail on day one, retailers will have stocks of anywhere between 2 days to 5 days. So retailers will go dry. So the government will first start manufacturing, then they will start distribution, supply chain, logistics, right? And then they will start retail in that phased manner as we per se, right? And from Brynco perspective, right, the supply chain has three very important essential elements, right? It has, first of all, capital investment that we would need to invest in the payment of excise duty so our products can be available in the warehouses. Second, we would need to have the fleet of drivers, laborers, loaders, etc. to drive that. Currently, all the migrant labor has actually moved back to their hometowns, and whether it's Delhi migrant laborers have gone back to whether it's Bihar or UP or Punjab, etc., for them to come back, right? And I think so the third part of the entire supply chain working would be also the cash inflow, right? Which is largely dependent upon the industry and the retail network and the on-premise network basically reviving. And I think so when the entire channel works together, then only the channel will be, or the industry will be successful. So those are the three ballpark areas that, we will concentrate and then basically make sure that from a supply point of view, we are well equipped to handle whenever the COVID restrictions are lifted.
Right, thanks. Anita, you have something to ask?
Yes. I have this question to all of you. I know that all of you have been really putting a great effort to reach out to the government and, putting your case forward. But, if in this forum, because we are hoping that there are many people in this who are attending, are listening to what the industry has to say. So could you please say, what are the things which you are expecting from the excise department from each state in terms of your advanced tax paid or license fee, or what is the other support which you're looking for, so that we can, put forward this also from our end to the government? I will start with, can I ask Nakul to start, please?
Yeah, so from a Maharashtra perspective, I think I covered one aspect, which was a possible permission to sell beer in growlers. Growlers are essentially takeaway 1 liter or 2 liter packages, which could be dispensed from existing bars, restaurants, or different options that we are putting forward. Apart from that, we've all one thing which is important to know about all of us here is that we all work on credit. My sales that happened in February, I have not been paid for. So I have not just suffered from 10th of March, but in fact, I have already paid for taxes and salaries and rent for February, which has not come to me because by March, everyone shut shop and restaurants packed up. So the other thing we are asking the government is to kind of refund our excise and VAT for the month of Feb onwards, in fact, or carry forward when business does start. Those are the two main asks that we have as the microbrewery association. There's lots others, from a rent perspective and deferring of taxes perspective. Licenses, like someone else mentioned, luckily have already been deferred. So that was one of our asks, but in our case, it came through before.
Yeah, Anita, just on this, actually for, microbreweries setups which are in a particular state, the issue is obviously very critical, but still limited to one state. But for operations like ours or Rahul's or Aman's, where there is, and Ishan's, there is a multi-state operation. The complexity is that each state's policy is different, right? Now, from my experience working in Alcobev on the spirit side for 6-7 years, I've seen how companies have sort of come together to give a unified front to the government, and that increases effectiveness a lot more. So CIABC and ISWAI on the spirit side are very, very active, and all the big 3-4 players talk the same language. Now, unfortunately, in beer, that's a big challenge in my experience so far, where we need a concerted effort and all companies sort of coming together under one umbrella and then taking these issues to different state governments. Our experience in spirits was that, look, to an extent, governments are ready to listen, but you have to reach the right people, you have to give them the right representations, and you have to ask something that you believe that they can do, right? We're already facing a massive issue today, but what many people don't realize is that once things open up, we're going to face a bigger issue in terms of all states increasing VAT and taxation exponentially. Right, we've also already seen in West Bengal a 30% sales tax increase because state governments are so dependent on alcohol revenue for their state exchequer. We've seen, post GST implementation, because their dependence on alcohol revenue increased so much, rather than taking an excise duty and a VAT increase every 3-4 years. In the past 3-4 years, governments have taken excise duty increases every year, right? So now think of it as you're coming out of the post-pandemic scenario. Right, governments have already expended a lot of money fighting the COVID challenges. They have a huge fiscal deficit sitting in their books. What is it that is accessible to the state government to give them quick revenue, right? And that's unfortunately the Alcobev industry, which gives them the largest portion. So they are not going to really understand the challenges as such. They are going to ask them for their pound of flesh, and unfortunately, it's all going to get passed on to manufacturers and consumers. So that's the reality that we face. Now, the way to solve that is, to some extent, we've seen it work in spirits, is that we need the big manufacturers, the small manufacturers, NRAI, IBA, and the Craft Beer Association to come together, and not just to handle micro issues in a particular state, right? We need to be a body or a set of bodies that actually goes across multiple states. And, I know it's difficult for a little bit of time because their operations are limited to certain geographies, but it's high time, and we have good numbers now. We have 200 odd microbreweries.
Siddharth, we have a little bit of disturbance from your end.
Oh, sorry. Am I audible now? Yeah, so I'm saying we have 200 microbreweries in the country. We have a handful of brewing operations on a larger scale as well. We have NRAI, which is very, very active and very effective. And I think we need some more coordination and consolidation of issues presented to government in a manner where we feel that, okay, these 4-5 things we think are reasonable for the government to do, where it's not going to be a big ask for them.
So may I, Ishan, Mr. Kadak Grover, may I? So here, Siddharth, you're absolutely right that, there are these bigger associations and there are all these people who do this. The plight of the craft brewer industry in Maharashtra, I'm speaking, and I'm sure it's all over India, but here we are, our existence is in question. Those guys have other issues that they have taxation, higher taxation, etc. to fight, but they have ways to sell their product. Maharashtra craft brewers have no way to sell their product. What are we anticipating that the pubs will open by? When will they open by? We have a little time. We have 2 or 3 months or 4 months before we are actually physically allowed to. Going by China's record, there's social distancing. So you're already at 30% of capacity. And if the best case says you sell it at 50% capacity. At 50% capacity, at restricted time supply, at differences, craft brewers in Maharashtra are so restricted that we have nobody else to sell our product to but restaurateurs. The restaurateurs themselves, we are expecting, as the word says, 50 to 60 to 70% may not reopen entirely. We have already supplied to them. We have nowhere to go. We can't go to retail. We can't go to a retail shop that we are producing. So you sell. We have only restaurateurs. With 20% or 30% restaurateurs coming back to survive, I don't know when the demand will happen and what will happen. The existence of craft brewing as you know it in Maharashtra is now a question. We're all sitting down and doing a math that we're down to probably 1 month or 2 months of existence because we got a backlog, because we haven't received our receivables from February, because we paid for that one. We've got a lack of liters of beer within these 10 people that are brewing. We've got 1.20 crore worth of material that is literally being drained right now. So for us, yes, it'll be really nice that we really do associate ourselves with a bigger alcohol, but their challenges are slightly different from us because we have no survival. And
Right.
so for that reason, we are pushing and we're hoping that the government in Maharashtra, and I'm sure it's similar with Bangalore as well, where the restaurants won't be there. I don't think you can supply to the restaurants, but we do. And so that's where we're stuck. So it's literally craft brewing in Maharashtra is right now at a question mark.
No, absolutely, Manu, and I get that. It's a similar situation for craft brewers in Bangalore as well, and in Gurgaon or in other cities. Yeah. That's a challenge, right? Yeah. All I'm saying was that we from my experience dealing with government, we've got to go with them with a very short, sharp action plan of things that we can do. And any way we can help in sort of building that together, more than happy to do.
True. So what we're proceeding with, and our president Nakul right out here, and I'm also a part of the committee. So we've been at it together. So we're saying not only survival, we're also giving them projections of doubling their revenue, because by us being able to reach to retail, the demand should increase, and so their income should increase.
And one point to add to Manu's point is if we are allowed to sell growlers through existing bars and restaurants, then it's also a support for those guys who desperately need that.
Absolutely.
So it's sort of a win-win, and I hope they see it that way.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Can I ask Rahul this? Rahul, do you have any point-based remedies for a situation like this? I mean, what would your recommendation be?
Look, first of all, Siddharth, stop teasing us. I have no beer, okay? I have no beer at home, so please don't do this to us. Really. Okay. And that too, a great brew dog. I think you're having a punk IPA, right? Okay. So Anita, everybody knows, I think, a lot of people, consumers don't know this, but in India, liquor is a state subject. It's Constitution 47 says any state can do whatever. So a state can go dry, a state can say a 15-year-old can drink, a state can say, a 20-year-old can drink. So India is absolutely what I call states which are like Africa, not like Europe, literally. So we're like, every state is like countries in Africa. And the only way to work around liquor is to actually work with the state policy. There's nothing central. And everybody keeps saying, go to the government. There's no government here. We're talking about every state. It's a banana republic out there. Every state you have to go and explain to them that, you know what, you're going to lose revenues to the other state. It's a total herd mentality. One state increases the revenues, the other wants to increase revenues. Now in the post-COVID, it's going to get even worse because they've not got any GST contribution for the last 4 or 5 months. The country is broke. There's no money. Now, the only way a state can actually do is to milk this cow. And I mean, pun intended, milk this cow. And the only way to milk this cow is to actually increase revenues, not through revenue increments, but through policy changes. You cannot say, okay, reduce my revenue, reduce my excise duty. No, there are ways to make life easier through policy changes. For example, you remember the days you would get passport, actually your passport was not valid for more than 5 years and every year somebody had to come. Now you got a passport for 10 years. There are ways to do it. You label register something for 5 years, pay the fee every year, but it's auto registered. Ask Ishan Puri, the amount of time he spends running around offices trying to get 2 labels registered across states. Why do you need to go? So I'm saying policy changes in itself can actually bring in. There is so much of friction out there. There's so much friction and so much of a wastage. We're wasting time and money just trying to pull things around. And there are so many ways the policy changes can happen. Similarly, legal drinking age. Now I'm sitting in Haryana right now. And next to me is Rajasthan, where I was born. There I can drink alcohol. I'm talking about spirits at 18. But in Haryana, I can't drink beer at 25. Now ask my son who's 20 years old that, what the hell? How does a 7-year difference happen between just the border? That's absurd. This is the time for them to change policies. COVID has actually given us a new way of thinking, and all these state governments, and that's what we're trying to do. Every state, we're going to only go and work on policy changes. Let's make our life easy. Let's make ease of doing business really ease of doing business. Let's not do it fear of doing business. Right now, it's EOTB's become fear of doing business. And business will come back. Let me say this, business will come back. If in the long term, we're all dead. But if this COVID is going to go away, we're all back in business. There's nothing. We just have to go through this bend in the road. It's not the end of the road. But the government has to come as a stakeholder and help us at this time. And it's not really revenue. There's a lot of way they can do it through policy changes, which is in their hands. It's a slide of the hand. They can actually make policy changes. It doesn't require massive, smaller changes can make a large impact is what we're trying to work out. So about 11 states we're going to, and we'll work state to state and do this over the next 3 months for sure.
That's a great thing. Aman, would you like to add anything more?
No, I think so. The post-COVID is an interesting proposition because what I feel personally from my discussion with various groups and especially internal discussions is that retail will recover the fastest, right? And let's be very honest with ourselves, right? We are actually all worried still, right? COVID is very much out there, right? Even if liquor shops do open whenever, I'm hearing different things between 4th of May to 24th of May or even first week of June, right? We will not go out and party, right? We will be still conservative, right? Because the sentiment is conservative, right? The sentiment is low, right? People are worried, right? In these times, people don't go and party, right? So the on-trade actually is has a bleak future in the next 3 to 6 months, right? How social distancing will impact its revenue, Manu has talked about. I think so. What is also going to happen is that the excise is also going to enforce the social distancing based on the square feet utilization that you have. So if an outlet has a carpet area of, let's say, 1,000 square feet, in which seating is in 500 square feet, they will define the number of covers, right? Now, in those mathematics, right, with high rentals, and landlords not willing to, right, accommodate because, of course, they have been also taken loans and etc. linked to their EMIs. So what will generally happen is that the on-trade will recover slowly. It will take them 3 months, 6 months. I see a full recovery of on-trade going back into October, November. Now, within the on-trade, there will be a very drastic shift. The shift will be to 5-star hotels. 5-star hotels offer very high sanitation, hygiene standards, protocols. They have larger outfits in terms of their dining options. They have a large outdoors, right? So they will be better equipped, right, to come out of the post-COVID area. The second will be the social clubs, right? In Bangalore, in Bombay, Delhi, there's a great culture for social clubs. Again, right, they will be better equipped to come out and actually to address those issues. They have large lawns, etc. Right? So the consumers will then first graduate to these two specific channels of consumption, and then the restaurants will then cycle back, right? And that being said, the biggest challenge that I see in restaurants is that why would you want to hold a menu? Right? The menu is the first center of a disease. So the restaurant operators need to think today, right, how to build a contactless ecosystem. In the contactless ecosystem, right, a Bear Cafe consumer will go to the Bear Cafe app, will log in, will make his reservation at the AeroCity outlet. The table will be booked. He will order his burger and pizzas and a nice pint of Hopper and Brewdog in advance, served chilled, and there you go. He will arrive at 6:30, right, with two of his friends or three of his friends, right, and then drink. So what the F&B industry and the restaurant industry also need to think is that how the consumers will behave in the post-COVID era, right, and that's very important, right? Nobody will want to physically touch a menu, right? So those are the factors that will happen. I think so the retail offtake will take off immediately. The restaurants from a commercial point of view will also shorten the range, right? Today, Rahul is carrying 70 bears. Tomorrow he'll work with only 22 or 23 or 25 because of course there are pressures on working capital, right? And the whole cycle is broken, like I said, right? So there'll be pressures. Similarly, what will happen in retail, because consumers will be going there very often, right? So retail expansion of portfolio will take place. There'll be more products available at retail, right? So from craft brewers who are selling their products in a bottled format, in a canned format, right, will be able to propose these products in retail. And even in retail, social distancing will become a very important point. In Delhi, we have nice shops in malls, right? In Bangalore, we have the luxury of that, right? However, such large walk-in shops of the scale of Bangalore of 5 or 10,000 square feet are not there in Bombay, right? So you will need to then rethink on the strategy that how will consumers adopt to that. Will they call in, right? Will they place their orders online? Will it be, right? Can home delivery be made legalized, right? Which is not there in the system. So I think so those are the multitude of facets that, that the industry will need to address going forward. And like Rahul has said, it's not about all increasing taxes. It's about thinking out of the box that what we can do to enhance revenue.
Right. So before we go ahead towards the question and answers, I just want one remedy that you expect from the government, from all of you, so that we are also in talks with Brewer World. We are trying to launch a campaign where we highlight the points that you guys tell us today, and we represent probably through change.org, probably through our media networks. So I want one liner, one remedy from each one of you, so that those points can be jotted down by Anita and his team and her team, and then maybe tomorrow, maybe from Monday, we can start working and building upon a national level campaign. So starting with Aman, what is the one remedy that you want immediately from government?
Great question, Ishan. Thank you. I call you actually beer growers. So fundamentally, beer is a food product, right? That has been accepted around the world. The FSIA classifies it as a food product, right? So while I'm saying that the excise should tax us, right, but the excise should also liberate us in terms of allowing beer to be sold in non-licensed liquor outlets. That means your grocery stores should also be allowed to sell beer. And of course, it can be done in moderation. You can have protocols in place that, alcohol percentage should be capped up to 3%. There should be milder forms of alcohol of beer, but we should be beyond the clutches of excise as far as retailing is concerned. And if this happens, right, I can give you a guarantee we will go to 1 million outlets. We will see a revolution, right? And actually, it will be a boon for the industry and for craft. Not It's not about Brinco or Brewdog or Pravesh surviving or Nakul. At this point of time, we will have, right, a range, and we will have vast number of young enthusiastic people coming in this industry, bottling their beers and making these products available, like it happens in the US, in the UK, in Belgium, and across the world.
Right. And Mr. Rahul, what would you say your point?
I think everybody will cover similar points, but I look at our business or any other businesses like four wheels of a car. It's supply, it's demand, it's capital, and it's labor. These are four wheels which drive this car called the economy. At the moment, supply and demand are finished. Capital is suppressed, if not eroded. The only thing left is a unicycle called labor. The only thing I want is, and in my case also, like Pravesh said, we have 700 people. We want, I'm just calling it labor for the sake of it, but we want labor to be constructively used in this COVID time. If they're not being used, I can bet there's a social unrest coming ahead. Forget our business. A business doesn't mean anything till we do not do anything about our people, our employees. You know, a white collar, they can all live on it. Think of the blue collar. Think of the people on the front end. I am telling you, another month down, we will be in super social unrest. So that is what I want to do. Let's use them constructively. How to use it? I think the government can come out with some way.
Do you think government is going to give you any sort of remedy? I was reading ESIC policies, anything, something of that you would.
No.
So would probably want to highlight something.
No. Two things. There's an EPF which we've been contributing 24% over years, and the government says you can withdraw your EPF earlier. Now that's not something great. You know, it's not hardly a relief. It's my money. It's in my bank. If I withdraw it early, that's hardly a stimulus. The other is ESI. Anybody who's covered under ESI, we've been paying 4% for every employee cost per month as ESI insurance. That's an insurance against any calamity, including medical and financial. It's clearly stated. A financial calamity of this sort, the government, the ESI has to pay out of the insurance. It's a damn insurance scheme. The government has to pay for it. There is no way they cannot pay for it. And they're just getting away. The labor secretary has come on board yesterday saying, no, we can't pay back. What do you mean? I took an insurance, damn it. I need the money back from you. How can you say I can't pay for it? So it's unreal. It's absolutely crazy. I'm not looking at doles. I'm not looking at stimulus. I'm looking at my own money coming back to me. Then what about my income tax refunds? You know, that's not coming through too. So there is a lot that's happening. The excise duties, why do we pay license fee? You paid license fee for a year. If for 3 months I'm not going to be using my license, give my money back. So there are ways the government can do it. These are small measures. They don't require heavy duty thinking. I don't know who's thinking right now.
Very valid point. Nakul, what is in your mind? You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, so I think, as I've covered this 3 times already, I think growlers for all microbreweries across India, and if there is any scope, I don't see why they have they're so against this, but home delivery of liquor that should include growlers.
Right, Ishan, what do you think? What do you think should be a remedy for you guys like your companies like yours?
Unmute. Sorry. Ishan, so to be very honest, we are operating very much under the assumption that no relief or no meaningful relief is going to be provided. So I am actually, planning for a worst case scenario, and I hope to God that doesn't happen. But I'm just going to echo what Rahul and Aman have said. That first and foremost, look, we're going to have huge issues with expired stock, and we pay duty on all of it. Whatever stock we have in the depots in Karnataka, in our Haryana warehouse, in our Delhi warehouse, and in Karnataka and Delhi, the duty is criminally high, very similar to what you have in Maharashtra as well. What is going to happen to the duty we paid on that stock? I would like a refund or a rebate or some kind of concession on the duty we paid on our stock that will inevitably expire. The second thing is, I think Aman's made a great point. If you can increase the size of the universe and allow alcohol to actually be sold at more outlets, even in the absence of relief, it will at least provide a certain boost to everyone in the trade, So I think that's something, they should take seriously. And thirdly, like Rahul said, if if we're not operating for 2, 3, 4 months, why are they emailing us asking us to extend our license fee? That's absolutely absurd. A couple of states we haven't received correspondence from, but the states where we do pay abhorrently high license fees, we're being sent notifications saying, you need to pay extension fees by this so and so date. To me, that's totally out of the question. What are we paying for? That's adding insult to injury at the end of the day. So I think, no matter what the government stance is or what their view is on, or rather what the pecking order is of the liquor industry, I think certain concessions will have to be made. Otherwise there's going to be a domino effect.
True. And Manu, from your perspective?
My perspective is two, and part Rahul has covered it and part my president Nakul has covered it. First of all, for survival for our beer trade, for the beer that we make, let us reach retail. Allow us to retail, allow us to live, because we are literally finished, like I was explaining. The only way we will survive is retail. You allow us growlers, you allow us anything. Of course, we're asking for growlers because that's the quickest and the easiest way to do it. So we're asking for growlers. So allow us to retail. Now coming to the other aspect out of it, apart from the manpower that we employ, it's really been unfair that initially, when we did say we were putting people, we were sending them back home. We said first, right now, it's safety is your importance. We can figure out what your salaries are. We can give you sustenance allowance because that's what our company can afford for the time being. We'd have no access to capital, etc. Then the ministries and the government started piping in, saying that you must pay entire salaries. Even if we want to come to a little mid path sort of a discussion, that's getting blocked out because they're saying ESIC, which we have paid for regularly, they're not paying that back. We are a part of a little excise group on WhatsApp, in which we were asked to pay if you pay now, it's the last year's salary, it's the last year's license fees. But if you pay later, you have to pay 15% higher. We are saying we are dead. We have prepaid excise, but they're pushing this out. The moment we went on and we raised a red flag onto that, we said, this doesn't seem right. We were blocked off that to even reply back. It was put off that you have maybe it was done at a very low level and it wasn't really the excise minister who was doing it, but that's the mentality. You have to pay, and that's the end of it. We're saying help us, and we're being blocked off while saying if you don't pay, you have to pay 15% excise. So please, government, listen to us. We have paid you taxes. We have paid you income tax. We've paid you GST in our good times. We have done what we have to build the industry. We have paid our pound of flesh. We're now at a level where we need help. So turn around and help us. Don't squeeze us anymore, is what I would say.
Great. So we are actually crossed our 1 hour mark, and we just wanted to quickly wrap it up. So if you don't mind, we have a couple of question and answers that have been coming into our chat. And when I was reading it, one of the question I wanted to ask Pravesh. So at this point of time, a lot of people were ready to invest into microbreweries or into restaurant space. They've already invested halfway through it. Equipments are already in place. What is your advice to people like that? Because there are a lot of people, and a lot of people want to know this question. So what is your suggestion to them?
I think the economic depression is here, and it's actually going to stay here for the next 12 to 24 months. And as Rahul said, that expecting government to give way too much of stimulus is going to be just like a dream, which I don't see anytime soon coming true, right? It's probably just a hope. Two things, as we always can expect, ESIC and our EDs and AEDs to come back. I think this is not the right time for people to expand their restaurants or businesses. We have a couple of restaurants which were into the project stage. This is a tough time. I don't think so. The overall market size has shrunk down. The demand apprehension of consumers is going to continue. Where in a small market to micro market, 10,000 people were going. Now it's only 5,000 people going. So creating another restaurant option is going to be very big challenge for us right now. The survival is based on what we can do. I think the only thing what the existing restaurants can do is to focus on and accentuate their positives, let's say, and try to rechannelize their negative energies by doing something positive, and keep your head above the water and just survive, right? I don't think so. This is the great time for upcoming restaurant owners to come up with new startups, right? New microbreweries. So that's my suggestion.
We had,
Thanks.
just to add to a little bit to that, we were supposed to start our Calcutta project now. We were that ready. We had started onboarding people. We are considering abandoning the entire project.
Yeah.
We see no future in that.
Right. So I have last two questions, and both of them are for Siddharth. The first question is, Siddharth, as somebody has asked in the question answer thing, that what are some of the steps a new craft brand would have to take to shift focus from on-premise to off-premise? Since on-premise is literally not going to open or probably not going to be there, what are the strategies, especially in launching phase of the brand for Brewdog?
No, so I think, yes, it's a fair assumption that, off-trade will get active far more quicker and far more effectively than on-trade. I think, I completely understand all the views given. On-trade is going to be a really, really tough journey over the next few months and microbreweries. I think from an off-trade perspective, it's about making sure distribution and availability is absolutely top-notch. I think quality of products and quality of beer that you're selling and making available has to be something that each brand owner has to really ensure, because there is an interruption in supply chain that's happened. You don't want the consumer to have a bad experience, so you want to be very, very rigorous about that. And I think from an investment perspective in off-trade, from a Brewdog perspective, I think we are still very bullish of this market. In fact, we were looking to launch 6 to 8 more beers by April or May. We've launched 3. So that's something when the market opens up, we are still wanting to do. And you guys can look forward to almost 8 to 10 Brewdog beers in the market. So I think managing the supply chain, ensuring beer freshness and quality, that's going to be the paramount importance for us over the next few months.
I think the second question is also the similar one, because you are launching 3 or 4 styles. So somebody here wants to know, please ask towards the end, will Brewdog get the Lamb of God AF collab? To lighten up the mood, I want to know, is that in your cards? Is that beer going to be launched?
So that is something that we are considering. But, again, it goes back to a lot of the discussions here that, the government, what we used to call the government in the alcohol industry it's a nanny state today, where the government is the nanny and we are the children, right? And they basically scold and chide and shout at us, and we basically comply to what they want from us. Now, the way label registration is structured, if I want to import a small batch of Lamb of God into Delhi, it cost me $75,000 just to register there, right? And much more in other markets. So it'll come down to a function of different market combinations and what the government does to support. But yes, it's a very interesting beer that we are looking forward to in this market.
I think, Anita, over to you.
Yes.
Ishan, can I add
Yeah,
one thing?
Please.
Almost 50 years back, on 16th of March 1971, something crazy happened. This happened with 4 people sitting in a bar in England, where they realized the commercialization of beer was just going haywire, and the entire UK, as you know, is the place where real ales are made. And they made a campaign called CAMRA, which is now 50 years old, 190,000 members. And CAMRA is something I attend every year in UK. Yes. It's called the Campaign for Real Ale. It's for real ale. This is not to do with the AIBA. It's nothing to do with NRAI. It's nothing to do with anybody. This is real people, real campaign. I think time has come for people to have a movement now around beer. We've been talking about it. We've been going to the governments. Nothing will work. It has to come from bottom up. Everybody has to come. And Pravesh is an ambassador of that. He's shown that when people come together, what he's done in Bangalore when he did the Cleanathon, it's possible. You cannot imagine. I can get 190,000 people, which UK has in an organization in one day, within India. So we can create something. This is a time for Brewers World and everybody else and whoever is associated with this love for beer. at least we should create a campaign and go to the streets here whenever we do open up. That's what yeah.
And
quickly
just to
add to
add,
this,
just to add, if there was ever a compelling case for us to put forward to the government about home delivery and growlers and e-commerce, this is the time. There will never be a bigger compelling case.
So can I request Nakul, Rahul, Manu, Pravesh, and probably we can get in touch with all other CBI groups from Bangalore, and post this conversation, can we actually get on board? And we've been all trying to create a national level campaign, and post moment we know when this is happening, probably Brewer World can spearhead the whole digital campaign for us. And I think brilliant idea Rahul has come, and this is the time we all come together. No point discussing things if we don't act. So let us create a revolution, and this is what required. But yes, after the COVID impact has happened, after things have come to normalcy. So brilliant, let's just do it immediately.
Absolutely, absolutely. We, from Brewer World's point of view, we are willing to give all support what is required for the industry, and we are here for you. We will work closely with you all to see what are the different campaigns which we need to do and what are the messaging which needs to go out. And we are all geared up to support you. Let's take it forward. And I'm really, really glad that, there is a conversation which has started, and this is the way forward. And we will continue to do this with all your support. And do let us know your feedback on what else you require from a platform like ours, which is a media communication platform. Definitely, we'll be coming up with some other features also in the platform, which is, again, we are waiting for the lockdown to get over. I'm happy and thankful to all of you. We had at one point, about close to 300 people who are listening to all of us. And I think this is a great start. Let's continue this. And I'm thankful to all the panelists who took so much of time and sharing the difficulties and challenges what you all are going through. But we are with you, and we will all rise together. Thank you so much. I think,
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And for the audience,
so
we have another session
Cheers,
tomorrow at same time, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. We heard from the business owners. It's time to hear what brewers are going through. So we are going to do a session with brewers tomorrow, and probably request all the brewers to also log into the network tomorrow. Thank you so much. Thanks, Anita, for having us.
I have to say one more thing in the end. If all of you say, if we can bring the government officials also to a Zoom platform like this and invite everybody and do a session, we are more than happy to host it. But, I think you are the better judge in understanding whether they will come on board, but we can surely try.
That's fun to watch.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank
and
you,
have
everyone.
a good evening.